Roman Babushkin. Mahinsha's envoy says G20 summit being held in India is key event for Russia. Putin visit now a possibility. Suhasini Hadar, New Delhi. The G20 summit in India is one of the most important events for Moscow, said a senior Russian diplomat, indicating the possibility that Russian President Vladimir Putin could attend the summit, which would be the first time he would come face to face with Western leaders since the war in Ukraine began. Answering questions at the weekly briefing, the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson too said the government looks forward to welcoming Mr. Putin at the G20 summit in Delhi on September 9 and 10. As far as the G20 summit is concerned, we take it as one of the most important events this year, and all preparations are going on. Usually, plans of the president are announced in due course, said Russian Deputy Chief of Mission Roman Babushkin, who is the acting ambassador at present, in a written interview with The Hindu. In 2022, Mr. Putin skipped the G20 summit in Bali, given the war in Ukraine and threats from Western leaders to boycott him. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov participated in his place. While Mr. Babushkin said Russia was determined to support the Indian presidency to ensure the success of the G20 summit, the diplomat did not hold out hope that Russia and China would agree to the draft statement, which could result in a failure to issue a joint communique, a first in the G20 grouping's history. Consensus bid ahead of next week's G20 Sherpa meeting in Hampi, where top negotiators led by India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant will try to hammer out a consensus on a joint statement ahead of the summit. Mr. Babushkin said unless all countries are on board, there can be no consensus. He said Russia and China's stand against including the Ukraine war in the text was understood by the other members of the G20. Asked why Russia and China were holding up consensus on the Delhi statement, given that they had signed on to similar paragraphs on Ukraine in the Bali summit statement, the envoy said it was the Western states that were undermining India's presidency by politicizing the G20 that is meant to discuss economic issues. Last week, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had telephoned Russian President Vladimir Putin and briefed him about his visit to Washington, where a major GEHAL MAO on jet engine technology had been announced, paving the way for technology transfers from the US to India. Mr. Babushkin said that as a global power pursuing diversified foreign policy according to its national interests, India's partnership with the US is natural, and Russia would not comment on another bilateral relationship. Unfortunately, the US is preoccupied with this very purpose to get Russia out of India, weaken our cooperation and involve India in its geopolitical games, he added.